Hi, everyone. Welcome today from Amicus Brain. Amicus Brain Innovations is a digital technology healthcare startup, and we are focused on bringing the power of artificial intelligence to help transform care management for people living with dementia. We're about making technology solutions available to everyone to reduce caregiver stressors, to increase self-efficacy, and to enable people living with dementia to remain at home longer. Today, we bring you another in our series of Living Well with Dementia, where we have people living with Alzheimer's disease and related dementias share their stories, stories that help you understand the realities of living with dementia and how you can continue to live a meaningful life. Today, we have a conversation with Geeta Iyer, experienced caregiver, and Laurie Scherrer, who was diagnosed at the age of 55 with progressive dementia, suspected to be early onset Alzheimer's and frontotemporal dementia. During the conversation, please use the chat to share your experiences and make comments and share your questions, and we'll finish up with questions and answers from everyone. So now over to you, Geeta.
Thank you, Edie. And thanks again, Laurie, for joining us today for this conversation that I've been looking forward to. I think for me, you exemplify living an excellent life despite a dementia diagnosis. So I've gotten to know you the past few months through your meetings at DAA and that you host. And so I'm a little nervous today because I see that you do such a great job, of keeping to the agenda and getting to everyone and making everyone feel comfortable. So anyway, thank you and welcome. So let's get started with an introduction. I was just reading this quote. This is your words. I was living my dream, great career, lots of community involvement, plenty of social interaction, an abundance of family events, and a fair amount of travel. So this was the wonderful life you were living. So please tell us all about it and how that changed with the dementia diagnosis.
Thank you, Geeta, and thank you for having me on today to tell my experience on how we can live well with dementia. I was a workaholic, probably not a good thing, but I was. I worked many hours, had a fantastic career, made some really good money, and was very happy. In addition to that, I traveled a lot. I've now been to Africa 5 times. I've been to many countries. My husband and I were scuba divers, and in fact, we were assistant instructors for scuba diving. Loved the world of travel, loved new experiences, and I loved to work. My house was the center of all activity. I have 5 siblings and 17 nieces and nephews, and I've lost count of how many great nieces and nephews anymore, but my house was where everybody gathered. It was very common, unlike Thanksgiving and Christmas, for us to have 40 people at our house. We just put long tables out and just had a great time. I soon started getting agitated. I would find that very little things would agitate me, which was not my personality in the past. And things bothered me. And when I was with the whole family, I would find that I was getting very frustrated when multiple conversations were going on because I would be like this and not sure how to follow conversations. I did say, one of my quotes is, I was living my dream because I was. Had a wonderful career. I had wonderful activities and a wonderful family. In my job, I used to do some programming and I'd write formulas that were like, this big. I started realizing that I was having trouble adding and subtracting. I would go to write a check and I couldn't figure out how to take $128 and put it into words. I was vice president of a bank at one point, like, come on. I started having more and more agitation issues where people agitated me, things agitated me, and I couldn't figure out why. Slowly, this progressed to where I noticed my personality was changing from where I had been. One day, I walked in the house and my husband was laying on the floor playing with our dogs. And I said, oh, we really need to get these dogs groomed. He looked at me, he said, all right, Laura. Okay, what did I say? Well, it turns out that was like the 8th time I had said that same thing in the past half hour. To me, it was the first time I had ever said it, but it wasn't. This led my husband to bring to my attention how much I had been changing. So first thing you do is go to your family doctor. And he said, oh, you're depressed. I said, I'm a motivational speaker. I've never been depressed in my life. What do you mean I'm depressed? I'm depressed here and you saying I'm depressed. That's about it. He sent me then to another doctor. He sent me to another doctor. All in all, I went to 4 doctors. I went through over 30 hours of neuropsychological testing, some neuroimaging, just all kinds of testing. And when we went to the 4th doctor, he turned to my husband, not even me. Well, first I said to him, he said, you have early onset Alzheimer's and FTD. Well, I knew what Alzheimer's was, and that wasn't good, but FTD, flowers on the brain, that sounds pretty good, right? No, FTD is frontotemporal degeneration, meaning that my brain is disintegrating from the front back, basically. So what has impacted me the most is any kind of executive reasoning, executive thinking, such as how do I take $128 and make it into words? How do I count money has become an issue for me. And I still, what about my career? He turned to my husband and he said, you need to get her affairs in order, spend as much time with her family as you can, and come back in 6 months and let's see how much she's progressed. No literature, no information, no encouragement, basically go home and die was what we were told. When someone gives you a diagnosis of Alzheimer's or any dementia or any deadly disease of any kind, and does it in such a way to just say, go home and die, it's devastating. My husband and I sat in the car and cried and cried. Not knowing what to do next, having no literature, having no information, and just feeling like we were given a death sentence. The drive home seemed very, very long. At first, I went through such a period of despair. When the doctor tells you to go home and die, the doctor's always right, right? So what do? You go home and we prepared to die. I started going through closets, getting rid of stuff, did our will, did our do not resuscitate, did all that stuff. And all I thought about was dying. I was constantly, I gave away some of my jewelry, unfortunately. I shouldn't have done that, but I did. All I thought about was dying. I thought about all the things we couldn't do anymore. We couldn't go on trips. I couldn't scuba dive. It was a constant, I can't. Well, one of my favorite things during sales training, was The Little Engine That Could. This is my favorite book. I keep it with me all the time. The Little Engine That Could said, I think I can, I think I can, I think I can. And lo and behold, made it over the mountain to deliver the toys to the kids. And I got to thinking one day, I have never, ever lived my life depressed or negative. And decided it was time to change my life around. It was time to make a difference. That day I decided, you know what, if I have just one day of cognitive ability, I'm going to live it to the best I can. That was kind of, I answered more than the question you asked, I think, but.
No, that's absolutely, that's fine. I mean, that is tragic. I think what is tragic here is not just the diagnosis of dementia, but it's how you receive it, how it's given to you without compassion. And I think you talk about is that when your mom was diagnosed with cancer, it was different. Has it changed, do you think, because you've been in this time that you've gone through this journey a little bit now?
It is changing very slowly, but it is changing. And I'm proud that I've been able to be a part of that change. I have spoken many places to many different individuals. I spoke at the American Neurological something, I forget the total name, but there we had a number of students who were studying to be neurologists. And when they heard, not myself, but there was 3 of us living with dementia, when they heard what it was like when we were diagnosed, they gasped. And you tell the story about my mom. My mom was diagnosed with terminal cancer, and I was her care provider. I was her care partner. When she was diagnosed, the oncologist gave us the diagnosis that it was inoperable. Of course, the first question you say is, how long do I have? And he said, I'm not God. Based on how fast it's spreading, I would guess 3 to 6 months, which she lived 2.5 years, thank goodness. But so I would guess 3 to 6 months, but I'm not God. And we were like, well, what do we do? And he said, go home and live every day the best you can. Make the best of every day. Your body's going to tell you when you've had enough, but do what you can. We had literature. We had a list of support groups. They had a clergy on staff who would talk to us and would call us and not just check on my mom, but check on me. We had a social worker, a nurse. When I was diagnosed, we had nothing. How different that is to give one death sentence and say, go home and live, and give another death sentence and say, go home and die. Through that experience, I have so much learned that we need to live. And your question was, has it changed? Well, yeah. And the reason I say that is maybe 5 years ago, the first time I got up to speak, people looked at those of us living with dementia, and went, you talk? You actually speak? The general stigma of people living with dementia is someone in a wheelchair, not knowing who they are or anybody else is, and totally confused. Well, that may be true towards the end. But there's a beginning with dementia. There's a starting point. And sometimes that starting point can run for 20 years. I have a friend who is in his 27th year of diagnosis, and he's still active. in advocacy. To me, I believe a lot of the way people remain active is based on the way the doctors treat them and their mental well-being, their mental health, their positive attitude. I wish doctors would change the way they tell people their diagnosis, the way they treat care partners, because care partners, they also tell care partners, take the person home and let them dwindle. Instead, it needs to be more of a message of go home and live. It needs to be a message of there are many things you can still do. Okay, so I was vice president of the bank and now I can't count money. I can still do a lot of things, and I do a lot of things. I wish the doctors would say, be involved, get engaged, meet other people with dementia. One of my saving factors was I met a group called Virtual Memory Cafes. And there I met 5 people living with dementia who had totally started living. And they made me realize it was time for me to kick myself in the butt and live also. I wish the doctors would encourage a care partner. Don't do everything for them. The more you do for me, the less independent I am, and the more dependent I am on my care partner. There are days when I'm going to be tired and grumpy. I am, because I'm running a cognitive race. I use the example of sometimes I feel like my husband and I are on the track and I'm trying to jog a little bit. First he's on a bicycle and then he's on a race car and I'm still trying to jog along. My processing time is slower than most. So whereas I am working so hard all day long to maintain what's going on, what needs to be done, thinking about every task I have to do, everybody else is way up there. So yeah, my brain's tired by afternoon.
So does that lead up to sundowning? A lot of people have sundowning symptoms. Do you have them? And is that part of that you're all day, you're working so hard?
Yeah, I don't necessarily think it's really sundowning, although that's the name they've pegged to it. I think it's just that I'm tired.
Okay.
Picture yourself physically if you ran a race all day. Physically, you were running all day. That's basically what my brain is doing. My brain is running, trying to remember how to take the cap off a bottle. I have to think to do this. It's not automatic anymore. All the little things that we take for granted, to me, I often have to think about. I have to think about when I take a shower, make sure I do the shampoo, then the soap, then this, because if I don't, I'll get out of the shower having done nothing. So you're thinking about formats all day. You're thinking about tasks all day long. So have the doctors, have things changed? Well, I'm happy to say yes, because there's enough of us living with dementia out there that are giving the message of, please help me to live. Please encourage me to live. Don't say I'm dying of dementia. I am living with dementia. Focus on my abilities, not my inabilities. As those messages are getting out there, there is a slow change in the stigma and in the acceptance. You look at how many groups now have people living with dementia on their board. The Alzheimer's Association finally has people living with dementia on their board of directors.
You had mentioned, I think, in one of your blogs that when you started, you didn't get any help from the Alzheimer's Association, and the neurologists would generally refer their patients to the Alzheimer's Association. Yeah.
Yeah, and there was no support from them, absolutely none. Now that is different in some chapters. I will say, I know people who have had assistance from the Alzheimer's Association that have very, very active and good chapters. In my area, that was not the case.
And like you said, now they have people living with dementia on their board and, on their team. And so it's a learning process for them. So, I mean, these are wonderful insights for me, that, the one important lesson is people can live many, many years with dementia, a good life. They could do a lot of things. They may not be able to do the same things, but they can do different things or the same things differently. And can you tell us a little bit more about FTD? Because I know that is one of the lesser known, you don't have as many cases of frontotemporal disorder as Alzheimer's. So people usually think there's dementia as Alzheimer's. So you have both. And also in your case, so not knowing enough about it, does that cause misdiagnosis? And in your case, I think you were prescribed medication that would not agree with your FTD.
That's correct. When the doctor diagnosed me with FTD, he put me on donepezil. He also handed my husband medications for depression and anxiety because he said she will be acting up. We never filled that prescription, but he put me on donepezil and said that there's nothing that will cure you, but this might help slow it down. Well, donepezil has been known to increase the symptoms of FTD, and it did. The first couple months, I went down like nosedive. My husband thought within a year he'd have to have full-time care for me. After doing some research, I went off the donepezil and started coming back up to about where I was before. Misdiagnosis is huge within the dementia world. The Alzheimer's Association talks about all the people, everybody talks about how many people are living with Alzheimer's. I know of at least 15 people that were originally diagnosed with Alzheimer's that were then re-diagnosed with something else. Seems as though when you go to the neurologist, first thing they say is Alzheimer's, without doing further testing to see what other type of dementia it may be. And you look at Robin Williams, who was diagnosed with depression, and it was Lewy body dementia. More than likely, many of the medications he was given for his depression enhanced his Lewy body dementia.
Sad. So you had to immediately start planning, but unfortunately you started planning in a way that you thought I'm going to die tomorrow. What kind of planning do you recommend now, in terms of, long-term care or insurance? And in addition, what resources are available from the state or whatever other resources that may be available?
First, I would say, I really think I've come to learn that people, once they turn 18, should start getting their affairs together, because you don't know what's going to happen when. And by doing that, I mean, you should start thinking about disability insurance. You should start thinking about long-term care insurance. Put together a will. Those things are important because I was 55. I had my whole life ahead of me. Who would have known? So I wasn't prepared. I wish I had been. Be aware that some states, not all, thank goodness, but some states, the day the doctor gives you a diagnosis of any form of dementia, he writes to the Department of Motor Vehicles and your license is suspended. Wow. Imagine at 55 when you're doing fairly well and suddenly They tell you you can't drive anymore because you have dementia. There are many things that are impacted once you have a dementia diagnosis, but also many other types of things can happen. You need to be prepared for those. Once you are diagnosed, the biggest thing I recommend is socialize with other people with dementia. They're so important. I'm very involved in DAA, Dementia Action Alliance. I write a blog. My blog is dementiadaze.com, dementiadaze.com. For me, I find that writing helps me to kind of deal with how I feel. It helps me express my feelings. I used to write children's songs and sing in church all the time. Well, since my dementia, there's times I pick up my guitar and I can't remember how to use it at all. I can't do anything on it. So other times, thank goodness that I can play it. I used to sing all the time. Part of FTD is that I've lost my ability to hear myself all the time. So basically I've become tone deaf, whereas I used to sing well. I now sound like my sister. That wasn't good. A lot of your brain changes. And for me, that's some of the things that change. So writing is a way that I can express my feelings and also help other people. It's important to learn how to do things differently. With DAA, the way I met DAA, by the way, was I had written a blog called Dear Teenager, This Is What Dementia Looks Like. And Teepa Snow saw it, and Teepa contacted me and asked if she could use my blog, and then introduced me to DAA. Meeting DAA to me it opened a whole new world. The reason is, one of the things we need more than anything in life is to have a purpose. Why get out of bed if you have no purpose? Whether your symptoms are really advanced, if the only purpose you have is to button your shirt, let's encourage to button your shirt. Don't do it for them. Help them to do it. Through DAA, I've really grown to have a very strong purpose. I run 3 different discussion groups per week. I help coordinate the virtual engagement program. I am in charge of the volunteer program and quite a few other things. This keeps me mentally, gives me a reason to think. Because if you stop trying to think, those brain cells are going to back off. You know the old saying, if you don't use it, you lose it. You got to use it. You have to use your brain as much as you can. And although I used to do Excel formulas this long, now if I can just remember how to sort something in alphabetical order, it's like, yes, I did it. So you have to encourage yourself to continue to think and continue to grow. But most important, have a purpose in life and socialize with others living with dementia. I learn more from other people learning with dementia than I've ever learned from any doctor I've been to.
Actually, I feel the same way about DAA. You know, I've been attending your meetings and I'm learning so much, and that I don't learn from even people who do not have dementia, because I think for you, it is, your life is suddenly become so precious and every moment, and you're living it to the fullest. So it's just amazing. And thank you for letting me participate. So how do you, when in your interactions, when you go to the store or when in your interactions with people, you have to somehow communicate to them that, you know, slow down or whatever. And how do you do that? And also, there are many annoying things that people do, because I know, like, with my dad, relatives used to come and always they want to quiz him, stress him out. Do you remember me? No, don't tell him, Geeta. Guess who? And there was to educate them that don't start with remember. He's not going to remember. So what are your how do you do that, and what are some of the things that you would like to tell people?
Well, first off, get yourself a card. I have a card on the front. It has my website, my name, my email address. On the back, please be patient. I have dementia and may repeat questions, forget what you've told me, take longer to make a decision. These go with me everywhere. I go to a restaurant, I hand it to the waitress. I go on an airplane, I hand it to the head steward. Anywhere I go, these go with me. And sometimes people look at it and go, oh, okay. And other times it starts a conversation. You have dementia? Like, again, that stigma, you don't look like you have dementia, which opens up for a conversation where I can say, yeah, I do. Let me tell you about it. This has gotten me out of hot water more times than I can tell you. Because once people see this, they're not going to be going, that stupid woman, she can't count her coins. I'll tell you a little bit about that. I used to live in Pennsylvania. I now live in Alabama. And I would go to the grocery store and I would get so frustrated because they moved the groceries around. Now suddenly I always went to the grocery store. That was in aisle 5, that was in aisle 6. And I had my list according to what aisle. Then they changed it around. And suddenly I can't find anything. And so I'm getting frustrated. I'm getting anxious. And I went to the manager one day and I handed him this card. And I said, I need help. So he helped me find the things I needed. From that day on, he gave his employees a training session. And every time I walked in the store, if they saw me looking for something, somebody would come up and take me to the object. That's important because if you say aisle 6, you know what? I'm going to be walking up and down aisle 6 for half an hour still looking for that object. They would take me to the object and help me find it. If I was in line, and I'm very, very sensitive to noise, I've lost my ability to filter sound. So I'm hearing the carts going like this, the boxes being shelved, and the conversations on both sides of me at the same level, which is just nothing but a bunch of confusion, which is why earplugs, don't leave home without them. I've got them everywhere. When the store manager started realizing this, he trained his employees that if I was in line, they opened a new register and took me over to it. Wow. Is that service? That's someone who understands dementia. Things like that may seem very small to someone. To me, that's huge. That's huge because literally you can't tell me aisle 6.
Yes. I mean, it's a big point for caregivers as well, because you just taught me how to communicate with someone with dementia, and also some of the agitation that I would see in my dad, like you were talking about the noise coming from different directions and it's affecting him, but he couldn't tell me that like you're able to. But this is very important, I think. So, and how you lead, like you said, they should, instead of saying aisle 6, they take you to the object. You need more guidance in certain contexts. So I think that's really good to know. Another thing is vocabulary, because that's something that I have been thinking about more and more with my with some of the sessions. I think there was one session about words in DAA, and I want to be more sensitive, and also, I'm trying to spread out dementia awareness around where I am. So one of the things I read recently is not to use the word Alzheimer's patient, just focus on the person and not the disease. I think that's kind of the guiding principle. So can you tell me about some of those, some of the words that may be offensive? Because we use the word disability and some people were sensitive to that, even the word disability. But we can go too far or not do enough.
Yeah, let me stop a minute and go back to what I was saying about the earplugs, and then I'll go to that one next. I've heard people say, oh, my dad is just horrible. I thought I'd give him a treat and take him to the mall. If you're taking someone to the mall, be prepared, because the flashing lights and the signs saying open and all the flashing and all the noises and all the activity and high heels on the tile floor can be extremely overstimulating. If you're taking someone to the mall or Walmart, earplugs and sunglasses. Why? Because that's helping with the overstimulation. It's cutting down on the amount of noise. You want to start watching what the person's doing. The person isn't acting up. The person is reacting to an overstimulus within them or pain or something happening. That's something people don't think about, but that for me has been very, very strong. And your question was on words. Ooh, words matter. And if you go to daanow.org, we actually wrote a paper. People living with dementia wrote a paper on words matter. I heard someone the other day say something about people that are demented.
Yeah, yes, I winced every time he said that. He was a guest.
We are not demented. We are living with dementia. The words sound close. No.
He was, by the way, he was a neurologist, or he had a PhD.
Yeah, we've got him on our list to train next. The other thing is, you don't say, boy, I'd rather die of a heart attack than have dementia. That was
He said
another
that
thing.
too.
Yeah,
He said that too.
yeah.
Yeah.
I am not a patient except to my doctor. My doctor can say I'm a dementia patient. Nobody else. I am a person living with dementia. Since actually my FTD is more prominent than Alzheimer's, and that's the agitation. Agitation is very strong with me at times. On my lap, I keep my little towel, and this is one of my ways of dealing with agitation. Is you can wring the towel, you can beat it, you can smack it, and it just is fine. And I forgot what I was about to say, so I apologize. When
we were talking about words and
thank you. With people say Alzheimer's, there are people with Alzheimer's, and that tends to be the big word. They're with dementia. Dementia is an umbrella. You have dementia, and under that, within the realm of dementia, you have FTD, Alzheimer's, Lewy body, Parkinson's, a whole realm of diseases, conditions that fall under the realm of dementia. Many, many people diagnosed originally with Alzheimer's are re-diagnosed with something else. And therefore, when you're talking, it's not Alzheimer's, it's dementia, which covers Alzheimer's also. I think words like even a caregiver. Boy, I took care of my mom for 2.5 years, but we were care partners.
Yeah.
And what's the difference? The difference is we worked together. She told me how she felt. I told her how I felt. We worked together. We were a team. Someone who is my husband is a care partner. We work together. He's not my caregiver. He works with me. I think that's a word that strikes me is when people say caregiver. There's so many words that are insensitive, and I'm drawing a blank on the rest of them, so I apologize here.
No, that's all right.
Please go to
we're constantly learning. And caregiver, I'm glad you mentioned that, because only after I started attending the DA meetings did I never heard anyone use the word caregiver. And but it is everywhere. You know, that is the terminology used. Caregiver support groups. You know, on Facebook, I'm part of many groups, and so I'll be mindful of that. Yeah.
When you asked, your other question was about what's available out there.
Yes, the resources. Yeah.
Boy, I'll tell you, when I was first diagnosed at 55, I tried reaching out every which way I could to try and find support. Unless you're 65 or older, you're not a senior citizen. And majority of the places wouldn't have anything to do with me because I was not yet a senior citizen. The Alzheimer's Association in my area was not very supportive. So it's hard when you're under 65 to find resources. Resources that I would recommend for individuals diagnosed with dementia is dementiamentors.org and daanow.org. Both of those have very good programs that are going to help anybody diagnosed with dementia. In addition to that, we're going to try and help find ways to support care partners.
There was a question
The
here.
ADA.
Yeah, that's what I was saying.
Yeah, somebody asked a question about the ADA.
Yeah.
We're working with the ADA. We're trying to change them. You know, I was in banking during the time that the ADA came up with all the new things that we had to have for physical challenges, for physical disabilities. And one of the things that we had to do while I was at the bank was change all the ATMs to Braille, which was extremely expensive to change all your ATMs, including the ones at the drive-up window had to be Braille. Think about that. At the drive-up window, we changed to Braille. So the ADA tried to do what's the American Disability Act. We tried to come up with many ways to help people with physical challenges. And we did. Look at how years ago you didn't have all the wheelchair ramps and handlebars and everything else. And now we do. Yeah, there's still more to be done, but we've come a long way. We haven't done the same thing for people living with cognitive disabilities. We've pretty much ignored that area, and we're now trying to work more with that area. For example, someone just diagnosed with dementia does not need to lose their driver's license. Mm-hmm. Know the person, not just the label. Now, housing. One of the areas that people living with dementia are constantly challenged with is housing, because you can't drive, but yet until you are labeled disabled, you can't get public transportation at a reduced cost. And that was one of the things you mentioned, Geeta, was the word disabilities or disabled. I don't consider myself disabled. I'm differently abled. I have different abilities than I did before. But that word is important because by being labeled disabled, that means you are covered under the American Disabilities Act. So it's important for dementia to be labeled as a disability. But with that, if you are not labeled, if you do not have a diagnosis as a disability, then you don't get a lot of the reduced things, the reduced transportation, but you also have to be careful where you live. And I hear over and over again where family members have decided, oh, Jane can't be by himself anymore because he has dementia. We're going to move him into a memory care unit. You know, I have a lot of challenges. Do I look to you like I'm ready to move into a? I would go bonkers, man. I would be climbing the walls. Get me out of here. And that's the way many people are. They're not ready for that move. What they need instead is they need someone to come in and help with their checkbook. Something the government doesn't currently provide that maybe we should consider doing. Because I can't add and subtract anymore. How am I supposed to do a checkbook? They need help with how to get to doctor's appointments. The amount of money that people with dementia spend just trying to get to their neurologist every 6 months or whatever is astronomical. They need help with how to arrange your calendar. Man, if that isn't ever confusing, trying to figure out how to keep track of when my Zooms are, I get all messed up. Now to top it off, I moved from Eastern time to Central time. Man, is that a challenge? I can never figure out which time zone I'm on. And I'll show you, my husband has tried to work with me so much. I have all these little maps saying what's Central and Eastern and what the time zones are, because to me, this is a huge challenge. If I didn't have my husband, I wouldn't be able to count on anybody to help me. So as we're looking at the physical disabilities, the physical challenges, we need to also look at the mental, the cognitive challenges that come along with dementia, such as organizing, such as scheduling, such as adding and subtracting. So many people living with dementia are totally taken advantage by other people because they have to ask somebody else to help them with their finances. And that's a huge concern, is how many people are taken advantage of. I think I answered that question. Maybe I missed something.
Yes. Yeah. So I want to, just talk about one more thing on a positive note. Your motto is, I don't want to just survive and I want to thrive, and you are doing that. So I just want to talk about something fun, talk about all the adventure trips and all the fun things that you've been doing since your diagnosis. I just want people to know, that dementia can be like this.
I tend to be a daredevil. I just am. I love to do exciting things. Since my diagnosis, I've been scuba diving a few times. I can't afford to dive as much as we used to, but I have been a few times. I still dive, but I have to do it differently. Diving can be a very unsafe sport. You need to be careful with diving. So whereas before my husband and I used to go diving together and go off and have a nice peaceful dive together, we now have to have at least 2 people with me. And the reason is because if I start getting confused while I was underwater, I could not only hurt myself, but I could put him in danger as well. So in case I get confused, we have my husband and somebody else with me to help support me. I can't put my own equipment together anymore. Although I used to teach, I forget how to do things. Well, when you're doing something like scuba diving, yeah, you don't want to put your equipment on backwards. No, that's not a good thing. So I do still dive. I've been skydiving, a wonderful adventure. Love jumping out of a plane and skydiving. It was beautiful. I'd love to do it again.
I saw that video.
Oh, it was awesome. I love it. I want to do it again. I've been to South Africa twice since my diagnosis. And in fact, I had the privilege of speaking 4 times in South Africa about living with dementia. I did a dementia cruise where I was one of the speakers on a dementia cruise and got to speak just all over many different places. Let's see, parasailing. When I was in South Africa, I went parasailing off of Table Mountain. right over into Cape Town. That was fun. Kayaking, go kayaking through caverns. I do many things. I'm just love to be full of adventure, hiking, kayaking.
I mean, I have no words. I mean, this is just amazing. Um, this is what you write, your words. Yes, our life has changed drastically. Our dream plans, finances have changed. Much of our retirement fund is now used for expenses. And yet I am living and thriving and making a difference in the dementia world. And I see that. I learned that I can live a beneficial life with purpose and joy. My expectations have changed from an attitude of dying with dementia, which you talked about, to living with dementia, from being disabled to being differently abled. I focus on my abilities and find strategies to overcome challenges from my inabilities. And I think that is so inspiring. It's such an inspiring message for me personally and to many who will listen to this conversation. So I want to hand this over to Edie, who may have some questions about technology, because this is a technology, Amicus Brain Innovations is a technology company, and we're very interested in knowing what would help, in the context of dementia. What are some of the technologies that would help?
So we have a few questions in the chat, but before I get to that, just let me say, Laurie, that was a really illuminating conversation. I'm particularly taken by your analogies, describing how you're living with dementia as a cognitive foot race, and your husband on the bicycle and on the race car and so on. That really brings home what it feels like. And your other analogy about your analysis is slower. The engine, your computer is a little slower. Your memory is affected differently. Your communications differently. But the computer analogy really speaks to me. Maybe because
she has one more. She has one about Christmas tree.
Yeah. So that really storytelling really helps with that. Anyways, let me get to the questions in the chat and any questions from our readers. And so the first one is, what tools or technology do you recommend for people who are struggling with their diagnosis? It does take a lot of reframing of yourself in a different way, and that can be very hard for people who have thought of themselves one way and now have to think of themselves in this other way. How long does that take? And say something about what would help and what you used.
I have well over 300 friends living with dementia and involved in many groups. Sadly, some people never come out of it. They listen to the doctors say, go home and die, and they never change their focus from dying. It's a process. You go through grief, you go through anger, you go through pity, depression, and hopefully you get to the point that you kick yourself in the butt and say, I'm not living like this anymore. But the amount of time it takes to do that depends on the person and how much they want to change. That can be difficult.
Do you can you say a little bit about any tools or technology that have helped you? If when you were talking, when you showed your map, I thought, wow, that's a wonderful map. Everyone should have one of those. And I was thinking Post-it notes. I would use Post-it notes everywhere. Do you use things like that, or do you use software? What kind of technology?
Yes and yes. Post-it notes, I still have some of those, although I've tried to get rid of them. I know I told you I didn't need to share my screen, but I can share it, okay? One of the things that I've learned is I need my Mac. And my sister's always saying to me, oh, Android's so much cheaper, go with Android. Well, when my husband was working and I was home alone, and sometimes shouldn't have been home alone, we found that by being on all Apple products, we used my email address to log into every one. So he would be at work and he'd be able to see any messages I get. He'd be able to see what my schedule is. So he'd call me and say, remember, you have something happening, whatever. To me, Apple products have just been fantastic. And I'll just show you. One of the things I like about the Apple products is that when my alarms go off, it's going to tell me not only an alarm, but it's going to tell me, you've got Geeta today. So for me, that is just, I need that. Other people use Alexis, and Alexis is also another way that it can be really good. Another thing that I use that most people don't know about, but I swear by it, is called AnyList. AnyList keeps together all my list. It's my grocery list. We have a motorhome and we travel in our motorhome. It's got all the things I need to put in the motorhome. It's got my Sam's list when I'm traveling. It's got all the things I need to put in make sure that I have with me. That's important to me because I only had to write it once, just once. And now when we're getting ready to go somewhere, if I have a speaking engagement in California, we print out my list and I go through and I check off each item as we pack it. When we leave, we make sure we check off each item so it goes back in the suitcase, so it's done right. I was mentioning that a number of my friends use Alexis and just love it because Alexis now will tell you, hey, you've got an appointment. It'll remind you of things. One gentleman, when he walks in the house, he says, Alexis, I'm putting my keys on the counter by the microwave.
Oh.
And then later he says, Alexis, where are my keys? There's so many things that you can do with different types of technology. One of the concerns with that is that it's also very difficult for people to learn something new on technology. And I'll use the example. I do have a friend that always used Apple products and her daughter convinced her, go to Android, you need a new phone and it's way less expensive. She now has a phone that she's had for a year and she still can't answer it.
That's a little scary. So I've added Chitra to our gallery here. Chitra, you had a question. Chitra's the CEO of Amicus Brain, I should say that, and my boss. And Chitra, you had a question about smartphones?
Yeah, just following up on Laurie's description of her use of Mac. So do you also use phones a lot, Laurie, or are you a laptop, a Mac user? So how do you think about people living with dementia using phones or SMS or texting based alerts and prompts? Do you have a perspective that you can share?
Yeah, people don't realize how much little things can confuse us. For example, when I look down at my screen, I see two people named Amicus.
That's Chitra. I'll rename myself.
Okay.
My bad.
Things like that to other people, if somebody introduces themselves, they're going to remember. I'm not. I'm just not. So technology as a whole, yeah, it's great. And if I can remember how to use it, it's fantastic. But there are times I can't. And you asked, I used to be a techie, so I have an iMac, I have an iPad, I have an iPhone, and my husband has an iPhone and an iPad, all of which are synced together so he can keep track. I hate to say keep track of me because that's not right, so that he can aid me, so he can support me. There are times I can't text. I do it on voice And we know how the voice thing goes, the voice recognition. You say something and then you look at it back and you go, yeah, no, that's not quite what I meant to say. But I have to rely on that a lot. I also have a landline in my house because although I have a cell phone, I can't track my cell phone. I've tried to put it in the washing machine. Fortunately, I hadn't filled it with water yet when Roy found it.
Oh, okay.
I lose it. I do all kinds of things. I can't handle having a cell phone in the house. I'm okay outside of the house. So at home, I have a landline. And my family knows if you want to call me, don't bother calling me on the cell phone because it's sitting in the bedroom plugged in. With the landline, I have 4 lines throughout the house. So when the phone rings, I'm going to hear it no matter where I am. I don't have to carry it with me. And it's just much better for me. Can I use the cell phone? Usually, most of the time. But I can't always use that. However, picking up the house phone, I can always do that. The problem is, though, I can't remember how to dial somebody. So if they're not in the phone book on the phone, I'm in trouble. So sometimes it's a combination of, okay, my iPad, which is where my contacts are, to use the landline. Technology is awesome. But you need to remember, we need time to learn and process. And something I'm really good at today, I may totally not be able to do tomorrow. But then the next day, I might be able to do that. I think we want to continue to grow technology, but we also need to make it a little bit easier for people with dementia. Passwords, I know everybody talks about how hard it is to do passwords.
Yeah.
Try having dementia. I have all my passwords in one spot. And even with that, sometimes Roy's got to come help me because I can't figure out how do I get it off the iPad onto this computer that I'm trying to work. That can be extremely challenging. The touch tone systems, voice systems. Gee, I want to call and find out why I can't activate my card. Okay, so they give you 9 different numbers. Push this for that, push this for that. I can't do that anymore because by the time they get to the third, push this if you want accounts payable, I don't remember what my options were.
Yeah, it's very helpful, Laurie. I think there's no one single technology that is, what I'm taking away is we have to provide a variety of functions that people will that people can use in different contexts, different ways, rather than force a single function.
And on different days.
On different days, yeah. I'm sorry, I'm going to run because I have another
so-
call, but thank you so much, Laurie. It was very moving and highly, illuminative. And thanks for the work you're doing. We join you in that. We are a technology company, but what we have learned very early on is we have to become part of the advocacy, part of dispelling the myths around dementia, and part of helping to remove the stigma around it. So we are partners with you on this. So thank you for everything you're doing.
Well, thank you. Thank you. I don't know how much time we have, but if I could use one more analogy, Edie, do I have time for
Please,
that?
go ahead.
And that's the analogy that Geeta started to say. And I just get a lot of responses on this, and that is dementia is like a Christmas tree. I have some really good moments when I feel like just anything is possible. I also have some moments where confusion and disorientation take control of my emotions, my actions, and sometimes my body functions. Dementia doesn't just happen overnight. It's a slow process. I want you to think for a moment about a beautiful Christmas tree, all decorated with lots of lights and ornaments and ribbons. One day, one of the bulbs starts to flicker. You tap it a little and it goes back on. Over time, another starts to flicker and then another, and you tap them. Sometimes they come back on and sometimes they don't. So you make adjustments to distract from the burnout bulb. You move an ornament, or you put some tinsel or move a ribbon in order to cover up the fact that one of your lights is burnt out. All the while this is happening, your tree remains beautiful and brightens the room. There are times for me where my light bulbs flicker. I can't remember how to play the guitar today, but then sometimes tomorrow I do. There's other lights that have burnt out, such as counting money and different math functions. I really can't do those anymore and get them right. People who don't see our tree or who often visit during the day may not notice the lights that are flickering or the ones that are totally burnt out. But I know that in time, they're probably all going to fade. For now, enough of my lights are shining and shining bright that I can still brighten the world. Physically, I'm strong and healthy. Roy and I try to make adjustments to compensate for the flickering bulbs, change an ornament, cover a ribbon. Sometimes people say to me, "You don't look like you have dementia." And I'm really thankful that my lights aren't flickering or that we've made enough adjustments that I don't look like people expect me to. For now, my tree stands tall and bright and beautiful. With routines and adjustments, I'm able to live a beneficial, happy life. The day may come when all my light bulbs dim and then go out. I'm thankful that I can be useful during these days. But as Roy reminds me, a Christmas tree is still beautiful, even during the day or when the lights are turned off.
Yeah, that was so good. I don't want to say another word, but
No,
thank you, Laurie. That was a lovely analogy. Thank you.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, it was really nice. So we're wrapping up, and I'd like to encourage everybody to visit our website, amicus.brain. You can request a demo. You can follow us on Instagram and learn about more conversations like this, or not like this, but similar to this. And follow us as we continue to engage.
Laurie's website.
Sorry?
Also visit Laurie's.
Please. And would you repeat the website again, Laurie?
Dementia Daze, D-A-Z-E. So DEMENTIA.com.
So thank you, guys. It's been really a lovely conversation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a wonderful day, Laurie. And Edie.
Thank you, you too.
Bye.
Bye-bye.